So I'm on vacation in South Korea for a few weeks, and I didn't bring a laptop, or about a phone and a few iPads, including the new 2022 iPad Pro. I wanted to travel a little bit lighter this time, and I also wanted to give the iPad Life like a real run, including trying to edit this video shortly on an iPad, but we'll see how that goes. But I have some thoughts about these devices. I'm gonna start off with this one, the iPad Pro. So I've been using the 12.9-inch model with the mini LED screen, and there's a few new features this year. So first, you have the iPad Pro being printed on the back this year, which is new. In terms of real features, you have Wi-Fi 6E capability. I'm in a hotel, so I can't really test that. It also has the new M2 chip, so it's gonna be faster. But the big one for me was the new hover feature for Apple Pencil. And this is a game changer for digital artists or digital illustrators. So for artists, you often have to change your brush or brush size. And this isn't just for iPads, this is for any kind of digital artwork. And one of the big things that can ruin the flow for artists is to have to look back and forth between your brush palette window and then back to your brush cursor or where your Apple Pencil is. And just looking back and forth and trying to gauge or just map the size of that brush back to where it's gonna be and before you lay down the ink. And you hope that you've mapped it correctly in your mind because you can't see it, and you'll lay it down, you'll lay down that ink, and then if it's wrong, you have to undo it. And it's a whole process, and it can be very frustrating. And for a lot of my friends, that was the main reason why they wouldn't use iPads as their primary device for professional work. And this new hover feature fixes that completely. And I have to stress the accuracy of this thing. Like, I was very surprised because we've seen this type of tech in different iterations before. Like Samsung devices have had some kind of hover feature, and even some older Wacom tablets just wouldn't be particularly accurate. Like, there would be a bit of an offset from where the tip was and where it would show up on screen. You could work around it, but on the new iPad, it feels really dialed in. It even takes into account like the tilt of the pencil. It's well done. But when I first saw this, when I saw the announcement, I was like, that's gotta be a software thing, right? Like, it has to be something they could implement into older iPads. No, right? Because we've seen other things like this, even with older iPads. Like, they have the hover text feature, which is an accessibility feature, but it seems to be the same kind of thing going on. Like, you can take your Apple Pencil and hover it over some text and it'll display it in a magnified version of it. So you can just read it a little bit better. But they've had that capability for a long time, and it works on older iPads. And I thought, isn't it the same kind of thing? But there might be some hardware stuff going on. So if we take a look at an older iPad and you use hover text, you have to have your Apple Pencil really close to the screen before it detects it, and it doesn't feel particularly accurate in terms of the positioning and what you're pointing at. But on this new M2 iPad Pro, you can have the pencil the full 12 millimeters away and it still works, and the positional accuracy of what you're pointing at and what you're trying to magnify with hover text is much better. So it's possible that these new iPad Pros have had some hardware tweaks to get that hover pencil feature working. I'm not 100% sure, but one thing that is certain is that the digital art experience is way better on these new devices. There is one software thing I want to touch on real quickly. It's Stage Manager. So Stage Manager is a new multitasking feature in iPadOS 16 that allows you to arrange your current apps in a strip on the left. And you can manipulate these apps and whatever you're working on in a fairly fluid manner. But during the beta, it had a ton of problems. And I was concerned that if it launched like that, it would just be a huge turnoff for a lot of people. But seemingly, it's been fixed, at least on the M2 products. Like, it just feels much more polished. It's still not 100% perfect, but it's a lot less buggy than I had expected it to be, considering what we saw in the beta. Okay, I want to move this conversation over to the regular iPad, the 10th gen iPad that was also announced at the same time as the iPad Pro. Now, I don't have one here, but I have some thoughts about it. So the pricing, and more importantly, the feature set, or lack thereof, is controversial. I see a lot of commentary around this. It is a product that has the new design aesthetic. It has USB-C, it has some new colors, and it also has a new price tag. This thing's a lot more expensive than the 9th gen iPad. But there's some features on this thing that are seemingly better than what's on the iPad Pro. So it has a side-mounted front-facing camera, so you can have it in landscape mode and the camera would be right in the middle. But also has access to a really nice keyboard that has a row of function keys. And this keyboard is not available for that new iPad Pro. But also, it doesn't have access to the 2nd gen Apple Pencil. It still uses the 1st generation Apple Pencil, so it will need a dongle and a cable to charge it. Seemingly, it's because the normal charging spot for Apple Pencil 2 has been taken up by the side-mounted camera. But it has a lot of people going like, what is going on with this product? Why is it so expensive? Why does it not have certain features? Why does it have other certain features? It's a little bit confusing, but here's my take on it. So if you look at this new iPad and you compare it to like the 9th gen, forget about the pricing for a second. Like, what do you fundamentally get in terms of a product, right? You get a new design with like the side mounted Touch ID, but more importantly, you get side mounted speakers, like one on each side, proper stereo speakers instead of stereo coming out from one side. And for the vast majority of what people are using iPads for, which is consuming media, that's a huge upgrade. But you also get USB-C charging and Wi-Fi 6. Now, are those upgrades worth 120 bucks? No, like no way. At most, I'd say that's worth like 50 bucks is what I think I'd comfortably pay for it. But the problem here is that iPads are the most difficult product line to price and market properly for iPad. Like it's a product line that is like the fundamental experience that you get between like the cheapest iPad and the one that's triple the price is largely the same, right? Whether you get the $329 education version versus the $1,200 or $1,100 like Pro model, they kind of do the same thing. They're these powerful tablets with pen support. And Apple has to do all this weird stuff to manipulate the feature set to make it a viable business for them. I'm not trying to defend them, but this is just the way that iPads have always been. So this is no different. One thing I want to make a comment on though. People are talking about the laminated screen or the lack of a laminated screen on the 10th gen iPad Pro. It has to be that way. Laminated displays do look better because the display is fused right up to the glass. There's no air gap, so it just looks like a cleaner and crisper image. But if you crack one of those screens, you have to replace everything. The top glass layer, the touch layer, the display itself underneath, sometimes the driver. That whole thing is very expensive to replace. And like these are products that can be used in educational applications or enterprise applications. You have like hundreds or thousands of these things. And if you have to repair them regularly and frequently, you do not want a laminated screen. You want a non-laminated screen like that you see on the 10th gen iPad. And if it cracks, you just replace that top glass. It's like 15 bucks versus, I don't know, 100 bucks if you do the whole unit. So I see this conversation keep coming like, oh, the 10th gen iPad, why doesn't it have a laminated screen? This is why. It's been like this with all of the kind of lower end iPads, and it should be that way. Okay, there you have it. But this is so weird, shooting off of a phone, but this is all we got. Hope you guys enjoyed it.